Hey, everybody, what's going on? This is your man, Big B, Brian Hanley, and welcome to Steelers Almighty, man. Appreciate everybody being in here. Steelers Almighty, we're still the fastest growing Steelers podcast on YouTube. Got a good show for you guys today, man. Look, first off, Darnell Washington. He needs a bigger role within the Pittsburgh Steelers. We're going to discuss Darnell Washington and what 2025 can look like for him. Next up, Jerome Bettis. Does Jerome Bettis get overlooked by a lot of people? Maybe not Steeler fans, but does he get overlooked because of Franco? We'll talk about that some. And then next up, how good can Troy Fautanu be for the Pittsburgh Steelers? Or I guess the better question is, how good does he need to be for the Steelers? We'll discuss that. And then you'll definitely want to stick around for this one. The defense. It's got to be elite. It's got to be elite. Big price tag again for the Pittsburgh Steelers on defense, and it's got to start paying off in a big, big way if we want to have the kind of season that we want to have. So we'll discuss all that and more. Again, you can always find Steelers Almighty on YouTube at youtube.com/Steelers Almighty. Anywhere that you have social media, you can find Steelers Almighty. And if you prefer the audio version of this podcast, anywhere that you get a podcast, please make sure you click on Steelers Almighty. So remember, like, follow, subscribe, all that good stuff. Still get into the comment section and hit the notification bell so you know exactly when Steelers Almighty content comes out. Boom. Let's get into this, ladies and gentlemen. So, first off, Darnell Washington. Mount Washington, he had a better year last year. First of all, he is a huge individual, man. Just a big, big man. But what do we need from him? Last year he had 19 catches, 200 yards, and a touchdown. But there were some other opportunities that he could have been involved. But, in his first year, he didn't do much. There were reports, and it was true. He was coming off a knee injury. I don't know if he was 100%. He had 7 catches, 61 yards in 2023. Obviously up that last year. But it just he looked different. He looked more fluid. And that's another thing about him is that he has gotten bigger. Or I shouldn't say bigger. He's lost weight, but he looks more stout. If you can look more stout. I mean, the man was already a mountain. He's the first guy that you send off the bus. But Mount Washington is that guy. But what do they need? In Arthur Smith's offense, he actually can fit because Arthur Smith, his offense has always been predicated on having not just one receiving tight end, but 2. When his offenses have really been cooking, that's what he had. You go back to 2023. He had Kyle Pitts and Jonnu Smith. And I know there's been lots of talk about the Steelers possibly looking to trade for Jonnu Smith. Personally, I think that was his agent just throwing that out there. The Steelers may have called, or maybe they got called, but I don't think there's a whole lot of buzz to that. But we'll see. Either way, back then, Kyle Pitts, who a lot of people think were a disappointment, decent numbers in 2023. There's 103 catches between the two for 1,249 yards, 6 touchdowns. Now you think, well, that's not great numbers, but it's okay. But you look at it as far as the quarterback. Desmond Ridder and Tyler Heineke were the quarterbacks of the Atlanta Falcons that season. So that's the type of quarterback play that Arthur Smith offense was dealing with. And those are still not bad numbers when you consider who was throwing them the football and what was going on there. Now, they also ran it a bunch and ran it effectively, but not good quarterback play, to say the least. So I think Mount Washington's got to do more. If he's the second tight end, which he is the second tight end, they need him to do more. I think the production's got to go up. I think a 30 to 40 catch year has to be in the mind frame of this Pittsburgh Steeler offense. Again, too many times opportunities over the middle or up the seam, tight ends are open, and they just weren't utilized last year. That can't be the case this year. And having said all of that, I think Aaron Rodgers, if you're open, I've said this many times, if you're open, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw you the football. It's just that simple. I don't care where you are. If you're on the sideline, on the numbers, up the hash, in the middle of the field, crossing route, wherever that happens to be, Aaron Rodgers is going to throw you the ball if you're open. So I think I wouldn't be afraid. If I'm Steeler fans this year, you're like, look, if we're not using the middle of the field this year, then there's a huge, huge problem because Aaron Rodgers has never been afraid to use it. And that means he's being overridden, which that would be a different conversation for a different day because, yeah, we won't even go down that route, people. I don't even want to put that out there in the air. Don't even want to do it. But you look at Darnell Washington, his overall PFF, again, PFF, just a tool, 71.2 on 602 snaps. So he was out there a good deal of the time for the Steelers. Not like he was out there, 150 to 200 snaps. He was out there a lot. You know, he's lost 10 to 15 pounds, looks leaner, looks faster. That's what people are talking about after OTAs and minicamp. He looks like a man that says, okay, I got to have a bigger role. Maybe I need to get leaner, quicker, faster to have a bigger role. Okay. And the one thing about it is that needed to be, he's such a big human being agile at 6'7", 6'8" is tough. But I think that's one of the things that he looks like he is this year, and looks healthier, better shape. Because I don't think that he was ever out of shape. I just think you can structure your body a certain way. And I think he's changed his body to look a different way, which is good. And because, again, he's going to need to be that. Now, the one thing that he does, he's basically what he has been, I should say, has been another tackle out on the football field. I don't know, man. Look, I know he's great at run blocking. Pass blocking wasn't great. As far as run blocking, 67.2. Pass blocking, 68.3. So, he's decent. But, and don't get me wrong, we need that. We absolutely need it, especially the way we want to run the football, and running inside, outside zones in those zone schemes. Just let Freiermuth be the backside of that. Let him be the cutoff guy. He doesn't always have to be play side because we know Freiermuth, that's not what he excels at. Washington does, so need to have more of that. Having said that, I want to see him be more in the passing. I think we need to get more, more red zone targets, more seam routes, throwing the ball to him up the seam. We saw a play last year. I think it was against the Giants where up the seam, I can't remember. Maybe it was the Cowboys. Yeah, it was the Cowboys. It was him and a safety. And he's one-on-one with the safety running up the seam. And lo and behold, Justin Fields tries to gun it in there. And I'm like, it's him and a 5'9" or a 5'11" safety. Why don't you just lob the ball up there? Even if you underthrow it, that's fine. Just put it high enough to where he can just go up and catch it where the guy has no shot. Instead, he tried to rifle it in there and throws it over his head. I'm like, what are you doing? So I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to make that throw. I feel like Aaron Rodgers is going to say, oh, yeah, we have an advantage. I'll just get it out there. And as long as I just get it high, if it's underthrown, that's fine. Just put it high and let him go make a catch. So I think the Steelers got to take more advantage of that. There's opportunities there for him to do that. I'll be excited how they use him this year because, again, a leaner, more agile, a faster Darnell Washington is going to be good for the Pittsburgh Steelers as long as he doesn't lose his power in the run game, which I find that real hard to believe that would be the case. I like what he looks like. I like when he's coming back and what he's wanting to get accomplished. I feel good about it, man. Let's go to the poll question. So poll question number 1. Which aspect of Darnell Washington's game would you like to see improve the most in 2025? So A, receiving yards, B, end zone targets, C, split out snaps, or D, route running. So which aspect do you want to see improve the most? So, and remember to put a number 1 in front of the answer that you give so we know exactly what poll question you guys are answering. If it's me, I just say receiving yards. Screw the split out snaps. I want to see his route running improve. Just give him the football. Just get him the football. And because a lot of times when they gave Darnell Washington, a lot of it was bootleg or bootleg routes and he's or a safety valve or something like that. I'm like, just drop back and just throw him the ball every now and then. He's capable of doing that. Otherwise, why did we draft the tight end in the third round if you can't just drop back and throw him the football? You got to need to be able to do that. So let's move on, people. So I like Jerome Bettis. I think Jerome Bettis is one of the best running backs in National Football League history. Now, where he sits in that is tricky, but I definitely think he's one of them because there's a lot of people that don't know that Jerome Bettis has the number of yards that he has. A lot of people think that Jerome Bettis, bruiser, didn't have a great yards per carry, 3.9 over his career. They think, oh, well, he probably has about 9,000 yards. Hey, he's got over 13,000. Okay, Jerome Bettis was a great, great running back in the National Football League, but more importantly for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But does he get overlooked as far as how good he was as a Steeler because of Franco? Let's dive into that a little bit. So he ran for 10,571 yards, 78 touchdowns in 10 seasons with the Pittsburgh Steelers. If you remember, he played 3 years in St. Louis/LA before he came to the Steelers, in a trade, which I mean, the Rams eventually got Marshall Faulk, but before that, the Rams got rid of Jerome Bettis because they took Lawrence Phillips. I mean, that didn't work out too well for them. But it worked out for us, so that's all that matters. So looking at him, he was a 2-time first-team All-Pro, 1-time second-team All-Pro, 1993 NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, and he is a member of the 2015 Hall of Fame class. I mean, we're not talking about a slouch here. And at 5'11", 251 pounds. Okay, fine. We'll say 251 pounds if that makes anybody feel better. I think Jerome Bettis was every bit of 270. I think Jerome Bettis, 265 to 270. That's just me. There's some people that think he was bigger than that. Okay, fine. I'll go with that too. But for him, what he was so light on his feet. He was so agile. Like he was doing things that guys that are 195 pounds were able to do. Just tippy toeing here and there and jump cutting. Guys his size weren't supposed to be able to do that because you thought Jerome Bettis, well, he's just a bruiser. Okay. And he was that. But he was also able to avoid people. And if he got in the open field, you didn't just run down Jerome Bettis. I'm not saying that the guy was a 4.3 40 guy, but I mean, he didn't just, he got in the open field. Oh, you run him down within 10 yards. No, I mean, if you're going to run down Jerome Bettis, you had to get on your horse because if you didn't catch him. So we're not talking about just some slowpoke. There's been guys, big running backs out there that weren't fast. They were just big bruisers. That wasn't Jerome Bettis. He could do all those things. He was so just extremely nimble for what he was able to do. But he also had power, and he especially had power down at the goal line. Brian Urlacher tells the story about how he got ran over by Jerome Bettis in the end zone. We've all seen it. I think it was on Monday Night Football. Bettis just runs him right over for a touchdown, and yeah, buddy, it's ugly. But it's just Jerome was, does he get overlooked because of Franco? Because here's the thing is that Jerome had, I guess, technically his signature moment, but it didn't come until the end of his career. Like to me, and you all may disagree and maybe say there's a different moment, but for me, his signature moment was just winning the Super Bowl in his last football game. Back in his hometown of Detroit, Steelers go win the Super Bowl over Seattle. Not that he did anything spectacular in the game, but that was kind of his signature moment. Now, I know he had great runs. I understand all of that, man. I get that. He had great runs that you could put a highlight tape together for. But think of that signature moment. I think it was that. Well, and the Steelers didn't win a bunch of Super Bowls behind Jerome Bettis. There's a lot of people that say, well, Bettis was good, but it didn't equate to winning. Now, I don't know that you can blame all of that on Jerome Bettis. I mean, he did his thing, but I don't know that you can blame all of that on him. But then you look at Franco, it's like Franco was really good. That's another thing. He was, and they won. I mean, hell, he was the MVP of a Super Bowl you know. So not only was he good, his winning and what he did equated to winning. And now, granted, his team was better. I mean, there's not, in my opinion, who's better than the 70 Steelers. You're not going to tell me. I'm never going to be convinced that anybody was better than that many Hall of Famers. I'm never going to be convinced of that. Having said that, Franco Harris was a key part in all of that. And it equated to 4 Super Bowls. He was a Super Bowl MVP, and Franco is beloved in Pittsburgh as well. He should be. But does he I mean, who was better? Like, was he better than Jerome Bettis? Because I really like Jerome Bettis. I like what he brought to the table. And again, Super Bowls, you got to have a lot to win a Super Bowl. You can't just have, okay, I got a running back and we'll win. It does not work that way. Everything has to be in sync for you to win a Super Bowl. You don't have teams, and I'm sure somebody can probably dig up where somebody had this great offense and their defense was lousy and they ended up winning a Super Bowl. I can't think of any, but maybe there was one out there that actually had. I mean, I don't mean average defense. I mean bad. So things have to work out in your favor. It's just, and luck comes into play sometimes. Heck, this Super Bowl that the Steelers won. Remember, Jerome Bettis fumbles on the goal line against the Indianapolis Colts. Big Ben is twisting and turning, makes a tackle on the guy for a Colts defender. And a Colts defender, all the guy had to do, if he would have just angled one way or another, Ben wasn't going to catch him, and it was going to be a touchdown. Instead, he doesn't do that. Ben makes an incredible play, and they miss a field goal, and then the Steelers go on and win the Super Bowl that same year. So luck comes into all of that too. But I just don't think Jerome gets his fair due. It's not necessarily from Steeler fans, because Steeler fans, I think, love Jerome Bettis. Matter of fact, I know they love Jerome Bettis. But I think he kind of gets, and I don't want to say brushed aside, but brushed aside, because of Franco, because of how good Franco was and what Franco Harris actually meant to the city of Pittsburgh. I think Jerome takes a backseat to that. Nothing wrong with having great players, and you got to have one or another, but I'm not sure who was actually better. If you're just asking me who was better, I think Jerome Bettis was really good, ladies and gentlemen. I think he was really good. So either way, I love both of them. But that's just the kind of a thing. It's like, who's better? And does he get overlooked? Let's go to the poll question, people. Let's go to the poll. So, poll question number 2. In your opinion, how much does playoff success influence the legacy of a player in the NFL? Is it A, a lot? It's the most important factor. B, somewhat, but individual stats matter too. C, not much. Legacy is about overall contribution. Or D, not at all. It's just one aspect of a player's career. Interesting poll question today for this one, ladies and gentlemen. Be looking forward to see what you guys have to say. Make sure you put a 2 in front of your answer so we all know exactly what poll question you guys are answering. Yeah, I love both of them, man. Love Franco, love Jerome. But sometimes I just think Jerome doesn't get his because even when the Steelers did win the Super Bowl, Jerome Bettis, he was done by then. I mean, that was Willie Parker's show. I mean, he was done by then. He was on the team, He contributed, but if you go back and look, he didn't contribute that much. Um, Other than I remember, I think it was the first game of the year where he had 3 carries, 3 touchdowns for 1 yard. So it was something insane like that. Fantasy owners absolutely loved it. So let's move on, people. Halftime. Look, first off, want to thank everybody for always supporting the channel the way that you guys have. That's why we can claim and actually be the fastest growing Steelers podcast on YouTube. Having said all of that, memberships. Look, I mentioned this before. They are starting over. We have made some changes to our memberships, ladies and gentlemen, that all of it is to your all's benefit. Unfortunately, when you make changes, YouTube kicks you all out. So I want to make sure you guys know that this will be happening over the weekend. So you guys will have to redo or re-up your membership next week when it kicks you out. So I apologize for any of the changes, or not necessarily changes. I apologize for you having to re-up. The changes are to your benefit. So that's something that we wanted to get accomplished for you guys. So I know it's a hassle. I apologize, but we did some reevaluating, and we needed to change some things and make it better for you guys. So, but any changes that you make with memberships, YouTube automatically kicks everybody out and makes everybody re-up. So I apologize. Just make sure if you're interested in still supporting the channel, make sure you go back in and sign up for memberships. So we appreciate it. That'll happen next week. Also, as far as merch is concerned, Steelers Almighty Shop is still out there, man. So make sure you guys go pick up. We got your Thunderbird shirts, Steelers Almighty shirts, Thunderbird advisory board shirts, hats, glasses, mugs. We got all the stuff out there and more to come. So again, you guys want to help support the channel in that way and get your Steelers stuff. It is out there. I know you guys have been asking for it. Well, it is out there, ladies and gentlemen. So make sure you go and sign up for that. And again, continue to like, follow, and subscribe if you have not already. Let's move on. So, how good can Troy Fautanu be? Or is the question, how good does he need to be? To me, I think that's the better question, is how good does he need to be versus how good can he be? Because, look, last year, he was the 20th pick last year. And by all accounts, had he not gotten hurt in the first preseason game last year, Troy Fautanu was going to be the starting right tackle of the Pittsburgh Steelers game one. We got everything that you needed to know was when he finally got healthy and got his shot and got out there. Mike Tomlin told us everything we needed to know about it. He's like, yeah, sometimes we just don't talk about rookies because we've never seen them, in game action or practice, but the guy was dominating out there. Mike Tomlin said that. So if he's saying that, he's telling us without telling us, yeah, Troy Fautanu was going to start had he been healthy. That lets me know everything I need to know about the young man, that he was incredible during training camp. They loved what they saw, and he was the right tackle, not Broderick Jones. And that doesn't mean Broderick was going to start at left tackle. It just means that the right tackle was going to be Troy Fautanu. I mean, and for what he did last year, look, he got hurt in the first preseason game, and then he was out. It was a little over a month, and then he came back week 2. Played 55 snaps in week 2. If it just to the naked eye, I thought he played pretty good. Graded out at 64.6 or 64.4 overall, 69.3 on pass blocking, gave up 2 pressures. Not only that, 2 pressures against an excellent defensive front that the Denver Broncos had. So let's keep that in mind. It wasn't that he was giving these up against just a bunch of nobodies. They had a pretty good defensive front in Denver for his first game ever, coming off an injury. And then he got hurt the next week on a Friday practice and was out for the year. Ugly. Now, the thing about Fautanu is that he fits, again, another fit. We talked about Darnell Washington earlier. Fautanu fits Arthur Smith's system. And you're like, well, what are you talking about, Big B? He's offensive lineman. Outside zone, inside zone. That he excels at it. can reach a 5 technique, can help double team on a 5, 6, and with a tight end or a guard, whatever he needs to do. But his thing is that he can reach and then get to the next level on the double team. That's what he excels at. Super athletic for his size. Feet are amazing. Hand placement. Once he engages, he doesn't let guys go. Like if he's trying to cut off the backside, he runs and runs. A lot of time you'll see an offensive lineman get to a certain point and they'll stop or they'll get engaged, but they'll be on the back shoulder. When it's a backside going away from Fautanu, once he engages, he works and works to cut guys off, which is what you want to do. That's what you need him to do. And you saw that on film. He's cutting guys off. Another person who does a great job of that is Zach Frazier, is cutting guys off, on the backside of runs or even front side of runs. He's cutting guys off. Fautanu does that, and he stays engaged, especially in the passing situation. Once he gets engaged, his footwork allows him, because he's so agile, to stay in front of people, and he's got fast and hard hands, and you have to have that in the National Football League, especially because there's a lot of people that think that he's a better guard than tackle because he doesn't have super, super long arms. But my thing is, yeah, but if he's athletic enough to cut off speed rushers and powerful enough to cut off their inside and bull rush, keep him at tackle. Like, what's the point? If as long as he can block the edge, isn't that all you want? To me, sometimes people get too locked into what the prototypical football player has to be. I wouldn't care if Troy Fautanu's arms were as long as an alligator. If he can block the edge and keep people from bull rushing him, who cares? Like, literally, who cares? Can he make the plays on a football field? And we saw him do it. And I think the talent as far as what he is, that's why he fell to 20 because of knee injuries. But his talent is undeniable. I always say that Broderick is the most talented guy. Troy Fautanu might be more talented, but we got to see it. We got to see it. So that's the one thing about it is they need the position to be solidified. They need it. They need Troy Fautanu to say, okay, this is my right tackle. I'm the Steelers' right tackle for the next decade. That's what needs to happen. Health obviously is huge. He's been with Pittsburgh for a year and he's been hurt twice, missed significant time, not once, but twice. That can't happen. And now nobody's blaming him. You don't blame people for getting hurt, but I mean, hey, it is what it is. If you're not available, you're not helping us. Got to find a way to stay healthy. And I know a lot of that's out of his hands. You can't help if your knee collapses or somebody falls into you or whatever it is, but you got to find a way to stay healthy. But if he does, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just telling you, Troy Fautanu is that good. That good. And that's what we want. It's a big year for him. Just to say, hey, guys, don't worry about the right tackle position. I got this for the next decade. Don't even worry about it. I'll be here. That's exactly what the Steelers need. That's exactly what they need. So, and like I mentioned, he could very well be the Steelers' best lineman, and that's saying a lot considering how good Zach Frazier is. But you know what I want? Competition. Hey, go battle it out to see who the best offensive lineman for the Steelers is going to be. Fautanu, Frazier, Broderick. See, who knows? Who knows? Go have that confidence. Go have that competitive battle and see who the best Steelers offensive line is. Because you know what that means? If they're battling out for that means the Steelers offensive line is playing well, and that's what we want to see, ladies and gentlemen. So that's all I care about is what do we got. So let's go to the poll question with our man, Mr. Troy Fautanu. How confident are you that a healthy Troy Fautanu will be a key piece of the Steelers' offensive line for the foreseeable future? A, very confident. B, somewhat confident. C, yeah, you're neutral. D, somewhat unconfident. And D, very unconfident. I don't like that one. But good question. Great question. Not even a good question. So very confident, somewhat confident, neutral. somewhat unconfident and very unconfident. Make sure you put a 3 in front of your answer so we know exactly what poll question you guys are answering. Need a big year from Troy. Need a big year from Troy, man. So, and I'm excited for it. Let's move on, people. So, defense needs to be elite this year. I've said that on several occasions. Let's break it down why. Again, the Steelers are the highest paid defense in the league. Whether that's good or bad, it is what it is. The salary cap went up, but they're spending $178,700,000 on their defense this year. That's number one. That's 64% of the salary cap. So that's a bundle. A lot of people think it needs to be the other way around. You need to spend that amount of money on offense because of the way that the rules are. Well, we can complain and talk about that all we want, but when you're not paying a quarterback, it gets tough to spend that kind of money on the offensive side. It's not impossible, and we've seen teams do it. Don't get me wrong. It just becomes a little bit more difficult when you do that. Having said that, doesn't really matter what we want or think. This is what's happening with the Pittsburgh Steelers this season. So what are we going to do? You know, I think the high-paid playmakers got to make plays. So the thing about it is like Cam Hayward, all-pro year last year, got to continue. TJ Watt, I know there's talk about his contract. TJ Watt's going to sign and got to be able to make the plays. Mika Fitzpatrick, huge, $18 million safety. Got to get him back to making plays and not just playing center field as the last line of defense. I say it over and over again. That's not what you pay somebody $18 million to do, or you shouldn't be paying somebody that kind of money, you know? And I don't believe that it isn't because Mika can't play anymore. I don't believe that at all. I just believe that that's the scheme and the schematics of it all, and I think it's got to change. And to me, it's crazy, but whatever. This is a new year. Last year was last year. Maybe it will change this year. I think it has to change this year. You know, got some different things. Now, here's the thing. The scoring defense were the Pittsburgh Steelers. In my opinion, it was a little misleading, you know, from last year. You know, they finished 7th. But was that really the 7th best defense in the league? I mean, when you think about it, we were 19th in the red zone scoring. That was 55.38%, which was 13th as far as percentage. So red zone scoring, you know, average, a little below average or whatever. Teams got into the end zone. Now, run defense, it's got to be a top 5 run defense. Look, you're spending that kind of money and you allocated that much draft capital to your defensive line, then you got to have a top 5 run defense. I don't care. It's got to be top 5. Look, last year they finished 11th. And to be quite honest with you, to finish 11th, you look at what the Steelers did, was it really 11th? Because when teams needed to run the ball, they were able to run it. 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. You know, when teams needed to run the ball against the Steelers, they were able to run the football against the Steelers. I'm not even counting the playoff game against Baltimore because that's sickening because clearly they did whatever they wanted. But even the previous game against Baltimore, I mean, teams were able to run the football when they wanted to run it, or better yet, when they needed to run it. So again, a little bit misleading, but if you got that kind of a high-paid defense, you got to be top 5 as a run defense. A lot of people say maybe just a top 5 defense overall, which I'm not going to argue with you if that's your argument, that it needs to be better. So yeah, look, they got a more athletic defensive line. We discussed that. They spent a ton of draft capital. 3 guys in this year's draft on defensive linemen. They needed to get younger, bigger, and more athletic. Well, the Steelers did that. Patrick Queen and Peyton Wilson need to be run stuffers. Now, there's going to be some people that are going to say, well, they got rid of Elandon Roberts. Those guys aren't big enough to be thumpers. No, I didn't say thumpers. Notice that. I said run stuffers. You can make tackles at the line of scrimmage where guys don't get away without just having to have a big hit. I love big hits. I hate that they have taken that away in the National Football League and start fining people. They've eliminated that element out of football. I can't stand it. But you do know what I do love just as much? Tackles at the line of scrimmage. He just grab somebody around his knees and he can't go anywhere else. Get a guy on the ground. You'll hear me say that for those of you that watch the game when you're a member at the highest level and we watch the games on Sundays. You'll hear me say that a million times. Get him on the ground. Get him on the ground. That's the only thing I care about. Get the guy on the ground. Those two have to be that guy. You don't have to blow everybody up to go make tackles. You don't have to do that. And I think that kind of gets overblown a lot of times. Just give me the sure tackler. That I'll take that over the big, especially since they've taken big hits out of the game as best they can. Just give me the sure tackler. That's all I want. And Queen, who said he didn't play up the snuff last year, and Wilson did a lot of run around blocks last year, was learning until the second half of the season. Those two have to step their game up and be sure tacklers to ensure that we have a top 5 run defense. So that has to happen. Pass defense, it's got to improve. Look, they finished 23rd last season. The cornerback position was a problem. Joey Porter Jr. took a step back. Dante Jackson wasn't any good. Beanie Bishop, that's not the guy that we needed at slot. They took advantage of him as early, often, and then they replaced him with Cam Sutton, who was even worse, which is insane, but he was worse than Beanie Bishop. So that's got to change. It's got to improve. They brought in some guys that are going to be able to do that. So we'll see. The Darius Slay, bringing him in, if it doesn't just fall off, which I guess that could happen at 34 years old. It didn't at 33. I know that. He played well at 33. This is not a Patrick Peterson situation. A lot of people have tried to equate that. Patrick Peterson had already slipped twice before he came to Pittsburgh. And don't tell me about interceptions. We saw Dante Jackson get 5 interceptions last year. How many of those came where he cut off a route? How many of those came where it was a jump ball and he out-jumped guy, cut in front of a route on anticipation? How many of those were just great defensive plays, or how many were a tip ball or an overthrown ball where a receiver was open, but the ball's overthrown? Now, you go back and talk to me about that. Interceptions are not all equal. They are absolutely not all equal. So hopefully Slay can do that. Hopefully he can help JPJ take a step forward this season and just trust his eyes. I kind of have a theory about JPJ, but we'll talk about that another time. But he's just got to trust himself more. He's just got to trust himself more. But the pass defense has to be there. It's got to be there. And play a little complementary football. Better pass defense, better run defense. That helps each other. It literally helps each other. Now, here's the thing. They face 6 out of the top 10 scoring offenses from 2024 this year. So this is not going to be an easy task for the Pittsburgh Steelers to just run through. 6 out of the top 10, and 2 of those they played twice in Cincinnati and Baltimore. So you start adding those to the equation. Oh, by the way, they also play the number 12 team as far as scoring offenses. So not an easy task for the defense. But again, at $178 million, it needs to be. Not necessarily an easy task, but it needs to be able to shut people down, at least slow them down. They play 5 of the top 10s in yards per game, including Baltimore and Cincinnati again twice. 5 of the 10. Now, here's the most important stat, at least in my eyes. The Steelers didn't get blown out in too many games. Who'd they get blown out by? I guess technically you could say Philadelphia, because would they go on too long, like an 18-play drive and a 21-play drive to end the damn game, which is insane. the Chiefs blew us out, and Baltimore, the last two Baltimore games. Okay. So they weren't getting blown out a ton by any of these football teams. Well, they play 5 of the top 10 fourth quarter scoring teams. So 5 of the top 10 in the league last year as far as fourth quarter scoring. Steelers got to figure out a way to be able to slow those teams down. They got to slow those teams down. I can't stress that enough, how much we need this defense to be better. You can't spend the kind of money that you're spending on defense and be the 11th best defense in the league or be the 14th best defense in the league. And now that would be one thing if the Steelers were blowing teams out and teams are getting a bunch of garbage yards on you. Okay, nobody would even really care about that because, hey, you know what? We're up 2 scores, 2 minutes left, 3 minutes left. Teams are just throwing it all over the lot to try to get a score, get back in the game. We're just playing prevent, keeping everybody in front of us. Okay, the Steelers aren't doing that. They're not just blowing teams out like that. Okay. And maybe that'll happen this year. And okay, great. But that's not what happened last year. It hasn't happened the last couple of years. We're not just blowing teams out, not to mention this is the National Football League. How often does somebody blow somebody out anyway? You know, and that doesn't happen very often. So the team's got to be able to slow people down in the fourth quarter, but you have to be a top tier defense. If the Steelers are trying to go where they're wanting to go, then you got to be a top tier defense. Isn't that what everybody has talked about? We're not spending money on offense. We're spending it all on defense. Well, you're spending all the money on defense. Well, damn it, you got to be good. The schematics have to change. We have to put more pressure out there. You know, we got to do things that teams aren't always expecting. Moving guys around, twists, slants, blitzes, just scheme in general. Mix it up. Can't be so predictable. I know we always say that stuff, but it's the truth. Just can't be so predictable. The defense has to be better. It's too much money to be 11th. Too much money to be 11th. And I know people are going to say, well, it was 7th in scoring. That's misleading. In my eyes, it's misleading. You know, you got to be better. You got to be better, especially in the passing department. Can't be 23rd. You can't be 11th. This needs to be a top 5 run defense, period. End of story. It just has to be. Just has to be. Let's go to the poll question. So, what do you think is the biggest challenge for the Steelers defense in 2025? A, enhancing red zone efficiency. B, improving pass defensive rankings. C, strengthening rushing defense. Or D, team chemistry with new additions. Team chemistry is over something that's overlooked. So we'll see exactly what those are going to be as far as the Pittsburgh Steelers are concerned. Make sure that you put a 4 in front of the answer so we know exactly what poll question you guys are answering. So, look, guys, I think it's pretty simple. I've kind of made it my point to continue to say this. I think the Steelers just need to go for it this year. Don't compromise your future, but I think they need to go for it this year. I think, look, you got a 41-year-old quarterback who's saying this is it. Okay. You got a young and should be improved defensive front. Okay. Same with the secondary. Not young, but a new, a better secondary than what you had last year. Okay. So if the defense is better, the offensive line, there's so many people out there that have argued with me that said, well, you don't know that the offensive line is going to be better. You know what? You don't know that about anybody that's playing in the National Football League, whether they're going to be better or not. Everything is on paper at this point. But if Broderick Jones was hurt last year and playing out of position, now that he's not hurt and playing in his correct position, doesn't that automatically make him a better player? Because to me, it does. Hey, I was out of position. Now I'm in my position and I'm not hurt. So you should just, even if you just play, you should be better. Okay. Troy Fautanu, he was better, a better right tackle than Broderick Jones. He's healthy. So just inserting him into the lineup makes that position better. Do we agree? think you have to agree with that. Okay. Isaac Siamalu, hurt last year, missed the first 4 games, wasn't healthy all year. You could see it in his play. Now that he's healthy, shouldn't he just be better just for the simple fact of him being better or being healthy? Yes. Is Zach Frazier, okay, well, he's not going to get any better. I find that hard to believe, but whatever. And Mason McCormick was all over the place with technique. Are we just saying he's just going to be that forever? Maybe he is. Okay. So you got 4 out of 5 offensive linemen that are better, and 1 stayed the same. That makes the offensive line better. In my opinion, the team should be better. But does that guarantee results? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They still have to do it on the field. But it doesn't mean that the Steelers are not better right now than what they were last year at this time, because they are. They absolutely are. But that doesn't mean anything when the real game start. Doesn't mean anything. So, but I like the start. I'm a glass half full guy, versus glass half empty. I'm a glass half full guy, but I'm a fan. So it is what it is. I appreciate you guys, man. That's all I got for you today. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Remember, memberships are going to start over this weekend. So remember to re-up your membership. And again, those changes are all going to be your favor, and you'll see them when they come out. Appreciate that and all the support that you guys have given. Remember to like, follow, subscribe, still getting those comments, and hit the notification bell so you know when Steelers Almighty content comes out. Until next time, thank you and aloha.